それでは出血を取りますよ。出席番号1番、イリアさん。はい。多すぎなんですけど。
Welcome back, nerds. Fino here with a guide for the newest master of the McCool School of Piss Pumping. It's Summer Illya. She's a 4-star archer introduced in Servant Summer Camp, and she's one of the few gacha servants from it that isn't clearly kneecapped out of the gate. Does that make her good, though? Well, we'll see about that. To answer the obvious question, the most efficient way of using her is with 2 Skadis. She can in fact loop, and on paper she seems well suited to the task. Quick, NP gain, both multi-turn, a 30% battery, even passive charge per turn. Tomoe's off trying to dig a tunnel with a PlayStation Move controller, and here's Illya rocking steroids that most farmers would kill for. Her NP even throws on some rainbow buffs, because why the hell not? But it's not so clean-cut. Those steroids? Illya needs every single one of them. And it's not even for damage. Her damage is actually on point. She's one of 3 4-star archers that breaks the 10k attack mark, and the only AoE servant among them. No, the problem, believe it or not, is her refund. An NP gain steroid, quick buff, battery skill, passive charge, and she has sketchy loops. I ran her in Atalante through the 5 permanent free quests that were both relevant for farming, and ones where you'd feasibly use an archer. To her credit, Illya was able to clear all of these, even the Lost Belt 4 Zerk node with the mage's uniform. However, a number of these were fairly tight, even at 10-10-10 NP5, with assistance from Fragment of 2004. That's right, I spent 3 lores on this. I'd be mad, but I also spent lores on Summer Maeve, and I'm never getting those back. What you'll notice about Illya is that without external intervention, she consistently undershoots the 49% refund you need to loop with Skadi, even on 3-3x enemy compositions. She has a battery, but you need the battery pretty much every time. So if you have any illusions about using her with a 0-star K-scope, it'll need to be with or a pen skill. When I ran her through Camelot Royal Castle and Shimosa Castletown, both nodes with irregular enemy counts, she was actually at risk of undershooting 20%, which would have made the run unsalvageable even with her battery. My point in bringing this up is that because Illya needs all her tools just to do basic farming, you're restricted in how much you can reach for harder or abnormal nodes. Comparing her to Atalante, it's night and day in terms of strengths and weaknesses. Atalante consistently gets above 50% against 3 enemy waves, even on the Zerk node, and against Shimosa Castletown, she can even shoot the moon, going for 100% refund on turn 1, so it doesn't matter what she gets on wave 2. Surprising, isn't it? Atalante's kit is extremely basic when you put it next to Illya's. It's like comparing the in-and-out menu to this wall of text someone wrote about why Summer Brynn is actually good. One is elegant and gets the job done. The other is more bloat than substance. If you're wondering about that wall text, by the way, it really just says, supportive attackers are good and you're a big dumb idiot, but pretentious and in 1,000+ words. For the record, they're largely mediocre, especially Brynzerker. The difference between our 2 archers really comes down to their fundamentals. Atalante is about 1500 attack weaker than Illya, but her NP has double Illya's hit count. Atalante loops trivially, but has trouble with high health enemies. For instance, at NP5, she barely meets the 200k damage check against Gawain in Royal Castle. A large part of that is because I had to burn damage tools in earlier waves to meet the refund requirement, but it's still a decent way to ballpark her limits. On the other hand, Illya does substantially more damage, but is a lot less reliable at getting to the boss wave with a full meter. Personally, I'd take Atalante between the 2, but if you have her maxed out, you can view Illya as kinda sort of a side grade. But if you aren't willing to go the distance, I'd be very careful about committing to Illya. Some of those refunds were close, even at NP5 with 10-10-10 skills, and I don't know how much you can afford to miss in terms of overkill damage. As a limited servant, chances to get Illya are rare and have a large opportunity cost, whereas an account can accumulate Atalantas over its lifetime. You could also pick the Art's Life, but I'd imagine you'd be watching the Jean video instead of this one if that were the case. Or I guess Emiya too, technically. Setting loops aside, the part of Illya you've probably heard the most about is that she pays child support. Her NP gain skill gives an attack buff to all child servants. Unfortunately, it's just a regular charisma style buff, not even a double buff, which means it's not really worth building a team around just for that gimmick. But let's say just for the sake of argument that it somehow is, like with a hypothetical Illya buff that makes it a 69% attack steroid. First, we'd have to establish what constitutes a child servant. It's actually murkier than you might expect. As far as I could tell, it's whatever the fuck Illya wants. For instance, Asterios counts. Servants who don't. Uriel, Helena, Ibuki's first form, Nemo, Habitrot, Fairy Knight Lancelot, King Protea. And being big isn't disqualifying, Paul Bunyan counts. Chiome doesn't count, and she's just Miu with a skin rash. And Ibaraki counts while Shuten doesn't. Now that one actually makes sense. One pesters you for candy, the other pesters you for dick, so we'll give her that. Also, some servants can get the attack buff, but only in specific ascensions, so no buffs for Book Rhyme or Pervert Comma. And unfortunately, there's no man-child tag in the game, so Oki does not in fact benefit from Illya's attack buff. But here's the more pertinent question. Oh my god, why would you run these servants together? Remember, Illya is a largely selfish servant. She demands more than she gives, meaning any teammates you pick have to benefit her first and foremost. In my book, that immediately cuts the pool of possible synergies down to 3. There's Voyager as a party crit buff. Unfortunately, Illya already has a bunch of crit effects and desperately wants anything else. There's his extra charge to living humans, which does work on Illya, but that's really about it. Van Gogh is in a similar situation. A lot of her effects are crit related, and just stacking crits on Illya doesn't coalesce into a coherent strategy. Probably the most effective child-related synergy Illya has is with Wu Zetian. Her attack and quick buffs help Illya get a more well-rounded set of steroids. Frankly, the child buff is a gimmick. A lot of these servants would rather work with each other and not Illya, or with 2 Skadis instead. Now I've mentioned the crit thing a few times, but let's lay it out. Illya has 2 crit buffs, one that goes for 3 turns and another that goes for 1 turn. Then there's Skadi, who gives a colossal multi-turn crit damage buff for quick cards. At first glance you might think that stacking the 2 sides together would turn Illya into a wrecking machine, but I found it doesn't work quite like that in practice. You can still do Old Faithful against bosses, NP, quick crit to get another NP, rinse and repeat. And your crits will hit quite hard, but you could say that about any quick servant when you pair them with Skadi. If you want apocalyptic crits, you need to cash in your damage via Buster cards. Unfortunately, Illya's deck only has a single Buster card, so she's not exactly equipped to be the next superhuman Orion. That and your Skadi buffs won't work on them even if she were. Put another way, Illya has a lot of power tied up in places that she doesn't reap clear benefits from. For instance, her big crit buff only lasts for a single turn, and it's tied to her quick buff, so you're often forced to choose between them. If you imagine a hypothetical power budget for Illya, her NP's share of the pie was reduced to accommodate her crit effects and gimmicks, and the result isn't a net positive. Her farming is needlessly tight, and if they wanted to trade reliability for damage, I'm not opposed to the idea. I just feel like that damage should have gone directly into her Noble Phantasm and not her face cards. Or if they wanted to commit to the kid gimmick, they could have done a lot more with that instead of making it a bog standard charisma buff. Overall, Illya's not bad, but she's not particularly special either. Her kit is a bunch of half measures, something that plagues a lot of summer camp servants. Because she's a limited gacha servant on top of this, it's hard for me to recommend her over permanent pool servants like the simpler but evergreen Atalanta, the jank but effective Emiya, and the future arts archer Zenobia. And if you want to shoot the moon for limited servants, there's always John Archer, who was just re-released on a global exclusive banner. Thanks for watching. I stream every weekend, 3 PM Pacific time, Friday through Sunday. Come see the action at twitch.tv/Finotaisen. See you there.